Hi, so welcome to another short video about navigating conflict. And this one's about supporting conversations. So we have looked a little at an inner process that we can use to move through our part in what conflict and see what the messages are for us and where we can find a bit more clarity and capacity. And then we looked at some ways of preparing for dialogue, having a dialogue with someone else, and also about ways to express ourselves. So we've been building up those skills to be able to hear the other person and express our truth and find some connection between us. And sometimes we are in a situation, so it may be like some friends are in a conflict or there's something going on in family or at work, and we are drawn in, or we feel like maybe we can support that conversation to happen, knowing that when it's not ours, we're a bit more able to stay present and hear what's going on and be someone that can bring in a bit more space and bring in a bit more capacity to that system. And so I'm talking today fairly informal basis, but it might be that you're doing this as a facilitator or you're just starting to explore facilitation. And so the first thing is to really check in with yourself, your expectations of yourself and your intention. So I know for me, I'm someone that I really notice when people are stressed and wish there could be harmony, wish there could be a way forward, wish that we can find some more understanding. And so I have to really check with myself, like, I'm here to support, I'm here to help, I'm here to be there as another presence and to bring my presence into the space and not to try and resolve it. So sometimes I guess people know the words like conflict resolution, and for me I'd really try and think about conflict transformation, but also just supporting conversations, just supporting people to be this. So what kind of support? So the words I've put down are supporting connection, so supporting people to stay connected with themselves and the connection between each other, supporting people to be heard, which can be really difficult when we're in a conflict, when we're triggered, when we're feeling sort of threatened, or we feel we might lose something, lose the relationship, lose our reputation, whatever it is. And also to support clarity. So so in terms of what that might look like and how that is, I think in most situations that I've been involved with, the first thing you'd want to do is speak to the people most impacted one-to-one. So we're going to focus a bit on two people today. Something similar counts when there's more people involved. It just gets a bit more complex. There might be more people involved than you have time to speak with one-to-one, so you might have to choose who you need to speak to. So let's go with the example of two people. So often there'd be a session beforehand where you get a chance to hear them, and the intentions with that are often the person wants to tell you all the story, and that's can be really helpful, especially for them actually. Because if you think of yourself as you're here to support them to have a conversation rather than you find solutions, often it's remembering that the conversation's for them. So sharing what they need to share to be able to feel like there's a connection with you, that they can trust you, that you understand enough, but being clear in yourself and with them that you're not there to kind of judge or to work out who's right and wrong, because often people can think of that as, when they think of mediation, that's what they might think of, or they're so used to having other processes where the external person's going to be the one that decides or the one that judges or corrects, and you need to be clear that that's not what you're there for. So often it's going to look quite like an empathy session or like a conversation and a supportive conversation where the person's going to tell you really what happened and what's been the impact on them. So you can use those questions from last time. So what do you want to tell me about what's happened and the impact on you, however you want to say it. And yeah, to give them a chance to say like what's been the most important things, and you can ask them for clarity, which will help them too. So, you know, what particular moments are we talking about? What was it particularly that was said or done? And yeah, help them find those moments where it really brought up a lot, and what has it been like for them. And again, like last time, it can, as well as how they're feeling, how's it affected their life, and you can support them to really be clear what's the meaning they're making of it, and the assumptions, and the stories they've got about the other person, and to just like just to see and understand that there's those things, and there's the things they know happened, and there's the things that impacted them, and what happened and the impact is more easy to be heard than the stories they've got about the other person. And again, emphasizing, you know, that's not about it's wrong to think those things, or they can't bring it, or there's a rule about how they have to speak. More just that understanding that the observations and what happened, the impact, are more likely to be heard and recreate a connection, which they can go from there. And then, like I said, clarity. So it might be a bit of support for them deciding which of those things they want to say, if there's a lot. And the other thing that's really important in those conversations beforehand is to say, it's up to you and it's up to the other person if you really want to step in. So making sure they understand what's going to happen, if they want a conversation, and like checking, that's really what they want, and are they in capacity? Is there anything they need to help them be in capacity? And you might remind them of tools they have themselves, or you might suggest something, so how they can come in as open and grounded as possible, which isn't easy in a conflict. So we've started to go into this other part, which is structure, really. And like I said, keeping it simple at the beginning. So that's already part of structure, having the one-to-one meetings first, and then seeing if there wants to be a dialogue on it, and if there is, what structure might happen in there. I think the thing I want to share that is really stuck with me from different trainings I've done is this idea of having like one headphone and many microphones. So your focus is, at least at the start, is to really supporting people to be heard, knowing that when there's a lot to process and there's triggers and there's conflict, it's really hard to hear each other. That's like the main thing often going on in conflict. There's so much going on for us, there's not enough space to hear the other person. And that's what you're there for. So I think this idea originally I heard it through the Extinction Rebellion transformation team, which I think was supported by an organization called Navigate a few years ago. I don't know where the original sort of visual come from, but I think it's fairly standard in these types of situations. So this is something you might share with them. So often in a conversation, it's a free flow. Someone says something, we respond, we react, all sorts can happen. And in this, if they're giving you permission for that, they're like happy to have your support for you to bring a bit of structure. That's the suggestion, that we'll give the metaphorical mic, to like one person. So that's often the person most impacted who's carrying a lot. It might also be the person who's willing to speak. Sometimes the person most impacted doesn't feel good about starting, like it feels too much to ask. So it's a bit of a balance to find those things. And you might have a strong instinct, but you might ask them and agree that. And then the focus of the others, which you might share and encourage them, is for them to imagine they've got headphones. They can only listen to that one voice that's got the mic. And their purpose in those moments is to, as much as possible, focus in on what the other person's saying. What's the core of what they're saying? What's the how much sense can they get of them, of like how they've been feeling, how they've been impacted, what it was that particularly triggered those things, and acknowledge it will be hard. There'll be moments where actually what's running in them is going to be the stories about the other, the way they want to respond, defending themselves. Of course, that's really natural. And again, this can be stuff you cover a bit in the one-to-ones before. You can also remind on the day. So you go through this flow. So one person's talking, the others are trying to listen. And what you're asking them to do, if they can, after the person's spoken, is like, can you reflect back what you heard? Sometimes people are able to do that, depending on how intense it is, and also whether they're used to this kind of idea of reflecting back. That might be reflecting back the core of what they heard. They might be reflecting back needs if they have sort of that MVC sense. Feelings and needs. So one person speaks, asking for reflections back. Sometimes it might be that you're the one that needs to reflect back. You'll have a sense from when you are with someone and whether they can reflect back or whether they can't. And sometimes you might do that quite a lot at the beginning to model it, and maybe asking them and then saying, thank you, and I'm also hearing this. So this reflection back happens, and then you'd go back to the person speaking and check with them, is that what you wanted heard? That's like the main question. So someone speaks, there's a reflection back, checking if that's what they wanted heard, and that might prompt more speaking, or they might feel satisfied for now. So there's a bit of an art of like when to switch from that person to the other. There's no rules about it. You'll have times where you realize later you let one person go on too long, or you might interrupt that person and switch and it will trigger them. It's like there's not a right way to do it. And sometimes just the reality is everyone really wants to speak and it's not possible for that to happen. So something I've really had to learn and still learning as an edge is the interrupting, because maybe when I'm just with someone one-to-one, it can go on as long as it needs or as long as the time we've agreed. But there is an art in this, as one person speaking, the others are hearing, their capacity is often slowly going down as they're taking more in and more reactions are coming up and they're needing to speak. So often I'll say to people, we're going to chunk it down. So we're going to hear some of what you've got to say, and then we're going to switch. We'll come back to you. If we don't have enough time, there'll be another space. So all of these things are different every time. Sorry, no easy kind of rule. There's more, but I think hopefully that gives you a little for now. And it might be get to a point where some really significant things have been said and landed enough that there's a connection there, and the conversation then might switch to more of a flowing conversation, like about maybe anything else or what's going to happen next. Sometimes that starts and then you realize you need to bring the structure back because it's kind of returning to an escalation, or it's returning to something where people are out of capacity and just responding. So you can always bring that back in. I'm going to pause, noticing that the capacity to hear each other's low right now. We're going to, do you want to try that structure again of one person speaking? And the other thing is just knowing, pausing, having breaks, knowing when you need to stop. And the hardest bit maybe is like, it might not get better. It might not have got to harmony, might not have got to solutions. People might still be hurting. And that's part of it. And I just want to bring gentleness to that. And the fact is, if you hadn't been there to support, the conversation would have been different and would have been maybe even more difficult. So just being gentle with yourself. It doesn't always go really well, and sometimes there's still breakthroughs. Sometimes it goes badly, but later on people have come back and said, I had an insight from that, or I realized something about myself, or I realized what I needed to do, and at least I wasn't stuck in that place. I'm just going to mention a few last things. So there's lots more ways of sort of structure and like methods of supporting conflict, navigating conflict. And I'm just going to mention them so you've got some idea of what they are and not go into that point. So maybe that that what I've described, facilitating a conversation between two people, tends to be known as mediation, but like MVC-based mediation. So there's also other types of mediation where it's more about, more solution-oriented, more about like making an agreement or even deciding who was right or wrong in the situation. So the MVC-based mediation is really focused on hearing each other and rebuilding enough connection that people can then come up with their own solutions. So restorative circles, and the way I use it, comes from Dominic Barter, and it's quite similar to what we just described, but with more people. So it will be the people that are impacted by a situation, which could be, 2, 3, 4 upwards, and it could be others that are affected sort of secondary by being in part of the community, or people that want to come along and support because they're part of that community. And similarly, a general sense is each person getting heard and building enough connection that people can then go to solutions. Restorative justice is more often used in kind of a criminal system as an alternative to a punitive system. But similarly, there's like a series of questions that get asked in one-to-ones, and then there might be a dialogue. And that's often used, it can be used as an alternative to a punitive system, which I would love to see more of in general in this country. At least for adults, it's used as a way of maybe after a crime has been committed and maybe after someone's done their sentence, they might be coming back to the community, or there might be victims might be wanting to meet someone who was a perpetrator of a crime and find some restorative way through. So more on that. I wanted to mention 2 more. Deep democracy is a way of actually really hearing different views and really moving beyond like a polarized, stuck debate into something that more generative. If you're interested in that, there's a little course I run, or I can recommend. There's really good, like 4 courses if that's somewhere you're interested in going. But really great way of having moving from sort of conflict into like actually exploring the views and what's to learn from this and what can we all understand about the situation rather than staying stuck from our perspective. Like how can we see the whole? I really love it. And last one, convergent facilitation, which again is MVC based, comes from Mickey Kashtan and NGL. And again, just to mention it, and if you're interested, can send links for more, or you can find out more online. And that's around when there's a kind of a conflict on the level of strategies, like we can't see a way forward, we're trying to find a way forward, maybe with a shared project or in a community or organization, and the strategies you've got are really different and they're clashing. So again, that's something, if you're interested in, let me know. So just a few of the more kind of formal structures. But for now, I hope some of that was useful. As always, really interested in your questions and your insights, anything you want to know, and love working with live scenarios. So if you've got something going on and you've got a sense you might want to step into that or support, and you need a bit more advice, feel free to get in touch. All right, thanks for now. I hope that was helpful.